So please welcome Sean Clayton to the show. Welcome, Sean,
Hey, good to be here.
all the way from Austin, Texas,
hmm
a newly Austin resident,
Yeah,
formerly Los Angeles.
formerly Los Angeles, originally from Dallas, lived all over the place and uh, getting centered, so it's good.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I've been on this podcast journey for almost 4 years, and it's just been an evolution. And I found you on Instagram I think that's where people are starting to see you, and your videos are amazing. And I understand that now because you have a marketing background, and I get, your specialties. I can see them now in different ways just because I've gotten to know you over the last few days. But when I start going down Sean Clayton's journey, I understand. I always look at it, everything, and I know you do too, but from the higher perspective, and why we are in this body, experiencing this time in this on this planet, and what difference we're here to make, and what we are here to expand our soul. And I see that in you so much. And what I found so fascinating is it hasn't been that, like, the last 3 years of this like personal like growth, um, but all the stuff that you went through was like, now you can see it, like, oh my gosh, I had to go to prison, I had to do all these things, I had to want to kill myself. There's so many, but can we kind of, so people kind of get an understanding of, because I think when I see who you are now, it's kind of easy to see, like, this, you're, handsome, strong, good speaker, knows, how the universe works, but that part of you hasn't been the long haul. And I think that is what I think is so cool. And I want you to share, really, I just want you to share where you want to start. Like, what I want people to see in you is that you've had not a rough life. Everything's perfect because everything is perfect, but go start wherever you want to start, Sean.
Yeah, for sure. So it's been, how do I even start? I always equate it to like a baby walking, and then
Right.
once it really learns to walk and then it runs, it's like, oh, you never realized how bad it couldn't walk.
Right.
So, so when I look at my life, time is always relative, right? So when you think about time, people put, well, for 40 years of your life, because I'm 44 now, 40 years of your life, you were this guy. And everybody knows me as that guy. My parents know me as that guy. My son, who's 15, knows me as that guy. Fortunately, my fiance, who is knowing me as a different guy, knew me as part of that guy and part of the other guy. So she's seen both
Okay.
sides of me, right? Which is interesting. And I'll go through a lot of that journey. But what was most, to back it all the way up, of course, we all come into the world and we call it this bornness that we go into. And I was given a really interesting, and beautiful set of parents. My father, he was similar to his father, which I was similar to him, which we all were kind of these like Rolling Stone, all over the place, womanizing people. And so my dad ended up having, affairs and other families and things like that. So I saw my mother go through that. So you see your mother go through that. And of course, me as a child, I'm closest to her. And so between, 0 and 8, I'm like mama's boy living up underneath her. I could remember, the times that she would like pick me up from school and I would have like something on my face. She'd lick her mouth and then it'd be like,
Uh-huh.
oh, that always smells so good to me, right?
Oh, I
So,
love that.
that whole thing.
Cute.
And then at all this traumatic stuff started to happen in my family around 8 years old and saw, a bunch of people die in my family. One of my uncles committed suicide. There was just many different things that happened. And I would go to these funerals and I would be almost in reverence of the fact that this death happened. And my grandmother, who's super religious, like, this is horrible. Why aren't you crying? And I'm like, well, these people are still with me. So I had this knowing at that time that there was no such thing as death. There was
Hmm.
just the opportunity to become unborn. And I didn't
Wow.
call it that at the time, but I had this whole unborn, eternal kind of understanding of self. And what happened through that is that I ended up getting very disowned by my grandmother. And because my family didn't do well financially, I would go spend time with her during the summer times. And she essentially was like, look, I don't want you around here anymore. And then I got shipped off to spend time with my grandmother in California. And when I was
Hmm.
there, I would spend the summers there. And my cousin, whose father was the one who took his life, um, was also there. And we both dealt with our trauma differently. I felt rejected. I got really quiet. And I was always like much smaller than other people. And he, on the other hand, was like much bigger than other people. So he's 14. I'm 9 at the time. And he took out his frustration on me through sexual abuse.
Hmm.
So that started to happen for the next 4 years until he graduated. And I, it was hard at the time. And,
Yeah.
we've all go through transformation. But then after when I come back, from that window of time, I'm like, oh, okay, now I am, what am I? Because then you lose all aspects of like
Hmm.
this innocence that you are. And what I think is most interesting is about when you grow up between, you know, 0 and like kind of 8, kind of the time bound that was happening, and then 9 to 14 is like you have this really pure innocence of wholeness, and like the divine is really in you as a child.
Right.
Parents program you into being something that's not that divine, into whatever
Hmm.
your bornness is, right? So you come in with the recognition of unbornness. You then become very born in a very physical, separated body. Your parents then tell you what you are, you become programmed. And then in essence, I got lost because all of a sudden this traumatic thing started happening to me, which I now know was me being able to pull myself into extensions of polarity.
Hmm.
So it's like, how bad could it get at a young age? And then I could see, well, I love my mother. How good could it get at this young age? And where do I find the middle space in between? So then at which point I go through this whole experience of watching my family kind of fall apart. Me and my mother getting alcohol, becoming an alcoholic, or maybe it's always there. My father with all of this infidelity that was taking place. And then I'm like, well, I don't have a family. So I'm just going to do really well in what I at the time thought was control, but I realized I can control nothing. Whatever I could influence, though, is how I call it now.
Hmm.
So then crush school, get really good at athletics. Even though I'm smaller than everybody else, I just train harder, work harder, think, study harder. 1590 on my SAT, get into all these great schools,
Oh,
Ivy
wow.
League, whatnot. It was like awesome. And
When
I
you
end
say
up,
you're small, are you short? Like you don't
oh,
come
I'm
across.
I'm 6'2" now, but
Oh, I'm like,
I was
geez, you
five.
seem big to me. I'm like, wait, you keep saying small.
No,
Like,
I was like almost like my whatever my energetic container was throwing up in a manifestation of my physical body. So I
okay,
felt small internally. I felt
got it.
unseen, so I showed up unseen.
Got it.
And so I was like 5'3" till I was 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
then I grew to like 5'11" when I graduated, and I grew an inch and a half in the last 5 years.
Huh.
So I'm like oddly, and put on a lot of muscle, and couldn't even grow this beard. I'll show you a picture here in a minute, but I couldn't even grow
Huh.
this beard like 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
late stage puberty.
Wow. Huh.
So
So
strange.
huh. Okay. Sorry to interrupt that, but I was kept hearing you say that and I was kind of like, I
Yeah.
just can't wrap my head around that.
Oh,
Okay.
I know. Yeah, it's like the craziest thing. And so yeah, I'm much taller now, much larger, but I would just like overwork and outwork everybody. And then I saw I could be successful by essentially creating more effort and integration into the world. I didn't realize what it meant at the time. I was just, let me just work harder. So got into all these schools, got into Harvard, got into, major Ivy Leagues, and went to University of Houston. And that pissed my dad off even more because he's like, what are you doing? Not going here, you're going there. And I ran track for him because I was good enough at track to get a scholarship. So then I
And
go
that's why you
there.
chose that. That's why you
Hmm.
chose
Hmm.
because you got a
Yeah,
scholarship.
I got a scholarship to actually do something that I physically thought that I was incapable of doing.
Got it.
So I mentally you could go anywhere and do anything, but like I was accepted in my physical form when I could say, looking back on that, I had
Hmm.
been rejected in my physical form or taken advantage of in my physical form.
Hmm.
So if you look at the energetics of it, it's like,
Interesting. Yeah.
what could I do
Huh.
physically? Didn't know that at the time. Looking back on it,
Right.
it's like that's what it was.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So did that, and then because I always wanted to be seen, and got pretty good at it, and won some championships and things like that. And Carl Lewis was my coach, and all
Oh,
this
wow.
other cool. That's why I went, because it was like, oh, this amazing track school. And but then when on my first year of college, no, second year of college, I ended up going to a this retreat thing, which was like this men's retreat. I ended up getting baptized. That's my I was always raised religious, but I actually, my first point of choosing religion, and ended up getting baptized, confessed my sins to the pastor. I was actually dating his daughter, and then I got married the next week. Right.
Jeez.
I was very gullible when it came down to
Wow.
the windows of spirit. I guess you'd call it spirituality or religion.
In
And
college, got married.
in college, I was married for not very long. It was about,
Okay.
like 6 months or so. But I gave it a shot because I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have something that I didn't actually have myself,
Right.
right? That I didn't feel like I had myself. Even and when I look back when I did have a family, I just didn't revere. I thought family should look a certain way.
Right.
And that was my family. That was my perfection. I just didn't realize that that was my perfection at the time. So now looking back on it, there's that. But in the time, what do? We start grasping for straws of our life in order to actually create the structure that, in essence, we have been told to believe, whether it's through movies, through friends, through other families. And instead of appreciating what we have and then saying, okay, I'm going to build from now, I'm building from this traumatic thing and I'm hoping for this future thing. And I'm starting to make mistakes.
Hmm.
So then get out of college, go do my whole work thing, got into medical staffing straight out of school, and ended up meeting, at the time, relation crushed it on that sales side, was the fastest a VP, outworked everybody, and then ended up getting married again, right? And I got married for the reasons that I saw her, she had kids. I saw myself
Okay.
in her kids. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to take care of these kids. And these kids look like me. And I'm helping when I show up, they become better. So if I
Hmm.
show up and they become better, and what am I doing? I'm healing a version of my childhood self. It had nothing to do with that in
Right.
itself. It just had to do with the fact that like there was all this going on. And it was not, I would say that it was the best that it could have been for what it was, but it was a struggle for me. And because I didn't love myself, what happens? You show up in the reflection of not loving somebody else. You can only love somebody as much as you love yourself, and they can only love you as much as you love yourself.
Right.
So your container is only so big. And so I can only imagine if I'm loving myself very little, then what happens is I'm always giving it out to these kids. And that whole relationship thing was a challenge.
Hmm.
Super depressed at the time, tried to take my life. I mean, I got, actual scars there,
Oh,
where I
yeah, on
slit my
your
wrist.
wrist.
Yeah. Put a gun to my head, pulled the trigger, didn't go off. I took a full bottle of Ambien, tried to take that,
What? What?
didn't die, and then tried to hang myself and the rafter broke. So I'm like, well, apparently I'm not supposed to do this.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
and and I'm not supposed to be in the situation that I'm in, but I'm there at the time because I am supposed to be there to learn a lesson, not learning the lesson. And so what do we do what does our soul do until we surrender? It just keeps kicking our ass. It's like, okay, you want to go through this and you have all of this possibility. The beautiful thing about polarity is how wide can the container get?
Hmm.
So if I'm going to extend, I'm going to have suffering on this side and I'm going to have bliss on this side. And I'd have moments of bliss that I would experience, but I would have so much suffering. And having that suffering means that the potential is so much bigger.
Right.
So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to, crush it in work. And so that was my potential, is that I could create this energy stuff with money.
Hmm.
And had a $20 million company at 27 years old, and unfortunately my business partner embezzled a bunch of money, disappeared with it, and the company blew up. And
That
in
was your
that
godfather or something,
yep,
right?
yep, exactly,
So
exactly.
kind of related, like a family.
Family member, very close.
Yeah. Okay.
Grew up in business with my dad, that whole thing. And
Hmm.
he ended up embezzling quite a bit of money, disappeared, and then I tried to fix that thing, right? So one day this bank comes in, says you owe us this money, and I'm like, we don't work with you, and they're like, yeah, you do, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me figure this thing out. So now I'm fast tracking to figure this out, like how to fix this problem, and didn't fix it. I fixed it temporarily, but not fixed it long term. And what I recognize is when you do things that aren't for the benefit of the all, you're going to have karmic actions take place because you're fixing the effect, not fixing the cause.
Right.
And fixing the cause would have been me fixing me, right?
Right.
And saying, why did I create this to love myself more? But no, I'm over here. Let me go chase the effect. I'm going to fix my buddy who's at the hospital about to get fired because he helped me cover the balance of the payment that I needed to make to the bank when we actually raised enough money internally. We were short 600 grand. I'm like, hey, the guy at the hospital. I'm like, can I get $600,000 from you and I'll advance bill you for the people working? He said, sure. Cut me the check. He didn't have capital expenditure approval. A year later, he's like, I can't do this. You need to send me the money back. I'm going to get fired. I'm like, bear with me. I'm going to figure this out.
Oh my gosh.
Hop on the dark web, find a way to actually get into the hospital system, end up rerouting emails to show that he actually got this approval from his boss, who was no longer at the company anymore, or no longer at the hospital, and fixed it. Went away.
Whoa.
Saved him, right? It was like saved him, didn't save
Okay.
me. I did
Oh
something.
my gosh.
I did something to hurt me to save him.
Got it.
And that's been actually a constant lesson in my life, is that I've always I've always used a gift that I've had to save somebody else and not save myself,
Hmm.
which is a really interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and then a year later, the hospital stops paying bills. I look up, there's somebody knocking on my door one morning, and basically it's the federal government, handcuffs on my back. My son's on the changing table at 6 in the
Oh
morning,
my
and
God.
they're like, "What did you do?" And I'd never gotten detention, much less been in federal
Right.
or criminal trouble. Didn't know what to do. I just tell them everything. I'm like, "Look, here's what happened. Check my computer. You could scan it. I'm good." Like, I didn't
Right.
do anything nefarious. And they ended up saying, "Oh, well, you're being really honest," because most people, I guess, just don't talk, which
Right.
probably might have benefited me at the time, but it's okay. I needed to do what I needed to do to be who I am today. So I ended up getting, not, they let me go out that day. Got a call from the U.S. attorney, and then the U.S. attorney comes back and says, "We're going to indict you for conspiracy to commit wire fraud unless you can get your godfather to come back," and because he had a whole other case that was against him, or you can fight us. We have a 98%, 99% conviction rate. Good luck. And you already told us everything, so you're not going to win. And if you fight us, we're going to go after, because my dad worked in the company, my sister was doing the bookkeeping. There's all kind of stuff in there, and we're going to go after your family. I'm like, well, I don't want that to happen either. And then, or you plea out, and you'll get 46 to 54 months in federal prison, or
Hmm.
sentence. So I pled out, and ended up doing the time, and it
Wow.
was it was, the 46 months. I ended up serving 2 years, 10 months fully, like almost a full 3 years with good time and everything. And that experience was, I would say, I did not like it. So I'm not gonna, I'm not going to recommend
But
it
I
to
know
anybody.
you, knowing
Yeah.
you, I
Yeah.
get why you say that because you're turning it into a gift. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that. And I think the most thing about you is when I'm listening to this story and I know what's in your heart and what you've come from and what you've experienced till you're what, 44 years old, in the last, it's like it is, everything is a gift. And to
Mm.
say, well, I didn't really like it. I think it wasn't like this most amazing 2 years and 10 months of my life, especially when you have a little baby that
Yeah.
you're missing. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
adding that on top of it,
Yeah.
continue. But yes, I
Yeah.
get it.
100%. Yeah, the three-dimensional illusion can be paralyzing, because the
Right.
thing that we think we're supposed to do, we get stuck in that context, and we're like, oh, I should be doing that thing. We're not doing that thing, and then we end up collapsing, right?
Right.
And so that's what started to happen. I was collapsing over and over again inside of it. I'm like, I got to get out of here. And I mean, I'm at a camp, right? I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I was in there with some of the darkest souls in the world, and some of them were mean, right? Some of them
Hmm.
fought, some of them, like one of my good friends, like, was the head of the Aryan Brotherhood. He had this whole swastika tattoo on his shoulder, face tat, the whole thing. We became friends because I was able to learn how to love people differently in there.
Hmm.
I became friends, one of my really good friends, gold teeth, tear tattoos, big guy, scary. I would never talk to him prior to going into this. And, now I can walk down the streets of any hood in the world, and I'm not afraid of anybody because I see all of
Yeah.
them as a reflection of me.
Right.
I can look at, somebody who is, in some, you know, crazy ass jihad organization that is like really angry. And I can be like, you are just all love, because you see those versions of people in there. And when I first got detained, I actually went behind bars and had to go through that whole thing. And I saw a bunch of stuff happen, and even, was assaulted inside of that situation, but
Jeez.
was able to get out of it and live in a halfway house until my sentencing happened. And that was a whole experience in itself. But I say all that to say that you just start to look at every soul with a different level of reverence. And yeah, you start to, everything you watch, everything you see once you get into the state starts to become a, like an enlightening experience. Like, I mean, like my fiance's son and I went to watch Willy Wonka last night.
We're
And
going tomorrow. Yeah.
oh my God, watch this movie and see how just radically optimistic Willy Wonka is.
Huh.
It's the most beautiful thing of
Oh, good.
how he moves in life. And no matter what happened to him, you know, at any given time, whether, like there were some pretty traumatic things that happened, he's just like, all right, let's
Hmm.
go. And every time it was just him being able to turn himself back around. And if we start doing that, all that's why he's magical. That's why he's able to do things that nobody else could do, because he was able to constantly see the world with
Yes.
so much reverence. And that's what that taught me. So, like I'll walk down the streets of Austin sometimes and be downtown, and there's these like little homeless corners, and it's very intimidating for people to go over there. And you just walk down the street, and I can walk through those areas and feel so much love for those individuals and give it
Hmm.
right back to them. And people would say that's stupid because you want to avoid it, but it's not. If you are the energy that's putting it off, then you're creating the world and the illusion. And it's like the double slit experiment. If anybody knows
Hmm.
about it, you pay attention to it. It's a very specific intention. You see what you're creating.
Right.
That's it, right? And you feel and witness it. So that's what started to happen because of that. And I'm very grateful for that experience, of being able to create that in my life.
Yeah. And weren't you like into the car dealerships and you went to the next level in that? I mean, I
Yeah,
learned so much about you. I was like, gosh, he's like he's going to figure it all out and not, you're not like what I see you now doing. Like, you're not just going to be happy at this level. You're going to take it to the net, like over the top.
there's a lot going on. Yeah, yeah. No, it was funny. So I was in the halfway house prior to being sentenced. I ended up having to get a job, and I didn't have any clothes. And I was like, well, I don't want to go buy stuff. And where can I go to get a uniform? And I'm like, well, the car dealerships, they wear a shirt, right? And I just get some black pants and some shoes, and I can go in and wash my stuff every day. And because I had had all my money detained, and then I wanted to help my family, and I was in DC and my family was in Dallas, I'm like, well, shit, I don't know what to do. I'll just start selling cars. And so they gave me a draw. I'm watching these other people sell cars in there, and then they run out on the lot and try to chase somebody. I'm like, well, this seems like a bad idea. And the lot and the place that we're in, they're selling like 60, 70 cars a month, and there are eight of us. So you can only imagine if you pay getting paid $100 a car, or sometimes $1,000 a car, depending on how much spread you would get. I mean, you can only make so much money, like if
Right.
you're out of those people. So there was one guy selling like 20, 25 cars a month, and he was clearing, probably 500 to $1,000 a car. So he was doing really well. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, what is he doing? And he's running this internet marketing. They called it internet marketing. They didn't call it digital marketing, they called it internet marketing back then. And I'm like, oh, I'll do that. Let me read about it. I got online, looked it up, had my dad send me a little bit of money, and ended up taking that money, putting it into digital ads that I outran the Google search ads out, from the competition of the dealership. Had more people coming in to see me, and then ended up going from selling like, the first month was like 15 cars, 20 cars, and then it got up to like where I was doing like 100 cars a month.
Wow.
And
I love
you
that.
do the math on that, it gets pretty significant. I was the number one Volkswagen salesperson. They had me, I couldn't go to the games, but they invited me to come to these like, courtside seat games at the Washington Wizards, because that was a sponsor for them at the time. Just all this cool stuff.
Huh. You couldn't
Yeah.
go because you were in the
Halfway house. Yeah.
halfway
Yeah. I
house.
couldn't, I couldn't even drive. So I couldn't do,
Oh, wow.
I couldn't test drive legally, test drive
Oh
people.
my God.
So I'd have to just sit in the car and let them drive, and then I'd have to take the metro back and get back at a specific time every day. It was
Wow.
pretty interesting. But did well with that, and then figured out, okay, I'm going to learn the hell out of this because I've got something here. Either I'm going to go back into medical staffing, which they said I couldn't do when I got out, or I'm going to go figure out how to do this car thing. And I learned all about advertising when I was incarcerated. So I just kept learning, learning, learning. When I got out, I could like flow with the best of them, even though I'd never facilitated hands-on keys. But I got out, I did the thing, and or not in the new platforms like Facebook and Meta was becoming a thing. And I became really good at all of that, and got out, did my own thing, and worked for this automotive AutoNation dealership and just crushed it.
Hmm.
And ended up getting recruited by other agencies along the way, and got to, a very top position inside of the largest agency in the world, WPP, which Nike was a client. I'm working with, Rolex and Dyson and
Oh, wow.
Coca-Cola, and Google's a client, Facebook's a client, like really kind of amazing things,
Hmm.
and helping them strategize, run media for them, and pulling together really cool plans. And then I ended up leaving, starting my own agency. Um, and, within that framework, ended up leaving Dallas, going to New York, and that's where I met love of my life, named Sophia. And she really opened up my eyes to meditation. She opened up my eyes to another possibility outside of itself. And that's when I would say, started to centralize my healing journey. And what I recognize is that until you find that divine feminine in your life, you're kind of like doing this masculine patriarchal thing. And really, her energy helped me to pull in a different level of intention and intuition
Hmm.
that I wasn't even aware of. Um, and I tried to bastardize it for a long time. I was not like the best guy, right?
Hmm.
Because I was becoming Mr. Nobody. I was trying to serve a family back in Texas while also living a life that I knew was my abundant fulfillment. And then once I made a true choice of where to be, life just started to bloom and opened up. And there was no
Hmm.
right or wrong choice. There was just the choice of my heart, the choice of
Right.
what I needed to be for myself, and loving myself to the fullest extent of it.
Right. And I look at Sophia as like an angel. Like when I
Yep.
listen to the story, like, when you look at life and when you meet people and someone's sent to you, like I feel like she was just like divinely sent
Hmm.
to see the shift and to see what she opened in you. And like, and it, I mean, that was what, 3 or 4 years ago? I mean, it wasn't
Yeah, it
right.
was like 2018 is when we met, and really where things started to open up, I would say, with 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was like 3 years, we went through, I would say, our let's date, love each other, go a little crazy on each other. And then it like 3 years ago is really when we started to energetically kick each other's ass, but love each other immensely. We had to really go through the process of breaking all of our traumatic bonds that we had within ourselves in order to be a full vessel to receive each other's light. And through that, it was challenging each other. I mean, and even as of today, like the other day, I'll get on a phone call and say something to somebody just to give them peace. Like, I have a bad day, and I'm like, hey, it's going to be okay. If something doesn't happen, I'll do this. And I know I'm not going to do that. And she's like,
Right.
you're not going to do that. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not going to do that. And that was totally out of intent, even the little thing.
Huh.
And it's interesting, the feedback loops. And it's not saying, hey, she's being overly critical. She's just like, you can be your best you,
Right.
and holding me accountable to being my best me, and watching myself fill myself up with that on a daily basis. And all it is me talking to me, but I'm
Right.
doing it through the
Yes.
mouthpiece of another. And
I
that's
love
what's
that.
really cool about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was her background? I mean, I know you're going to start talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza because he came into your life around now. But what was Sophia like? Why was she this enlightened being? Was she studying the personal development, spiritual?
Yeah, so she was really big into transcendental meditation. She led me in through the doorway of Sadhguru, right?
Okay.
So, like for instance, she was really big into TM. She's always known that there was something more. She's meditated off and on like her entire life, and um, she wouldn't say anything wrong with like religion, but she was like, "There's more than that.
Hmm.
It's religion and more." So me, I was like, religion's it. And I was coming in saying, well, it's got to be this or got to be that. So there was just a different way and take on it. So she showed me those doors,
Huh.
and she showed me this Sadhguru video one day. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That actually does make a lot of sense. But it didn't logically work for me.
Hmm.
And that's how I got to Dr. Joe's, because I was watching a Sadhguru video by Tom Bilyeu, who has
Uh-huh.
Impact Theory.
Hmm.
And then I went on a rabbit hole of all of his videos. And I'm like, oh, well, there's this guy, this guy, this guy. This is how to be successful. There's Jesse Itzler. And so I'm watching all of those. And then I run in, and this one I kept avoiding like the plague. It was Dr. Joe. And I'm like, this guy looks weird. This is before like, the hair filled in and whatnot. I'm like, this guy looks weird, and I'm not digging it. And I, what do you mean brainwash yourself? And I'm like, I'm gonna leave it alone. And I watched probably every video on Impact Theory except for this one.
Huh.
And I get to the end, and it just kept calling me, and it kept popping up in my feed and popping up. I was like, fine, I'll freaking watch it. And it was magical, hearing how he associates the quantum, the resonance field, how, the actual true, whether it's Wayne Dyer, thoughts become things, but all these
Hmm.
thoughts, when we stay out of the past, we get into our present, what that means. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And he's showing the math behind it. He's showing the quantum aspect and the physics of it. And I'm like, all
Right.
right, I get this. I get this. And so then at which point I'm like, babe, we got to go down this rabbit hole. And we, we,
That's
we,
like me.
we did the progressive workshop together. And then we went to a couple of Dr. Joe retreats together. And that's really where things started to crack open. And I would say I got stuck in Dr. Joe land for a while because I'm
Right.
like, oh, that's it. That's all there is. And I could recite the whole whatnot um, to a T, but then I was becoming less of me and more of him.
Right.
And so then the journey was, how do I get out of that space? And so my last year was a lot about that around, I went to different kind of meditation retreats. I tried different plant medicines. First time ever doing it was a year ago. Was it a year ago?
Oh,
No,
wow. Because you've done it a few
2 years
times.
ago. 2 years
Okay.
ago. 2 years ago.
But
Yeah.
didn't didn't Dr. Joe Dispenza um, make you understand how like you healed your thyroid? Like you didn't have in 2020 that you couldn't get your medicine and you're just like,
Oh,
okay, I'm
yeah.
going to see if what he really preaches is how he healed himself
Yeah.
from his bike accident and how what I mean, I look at his life, the same thing, like that accident was why it had to happen for him to open up this whole new level of belief and knowing that we are all capable of healing ourselves without the
Yeah. Without
pills
any of
and
that stuff. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. It was yeah, so that my first retreat that I went to with them, I go in, and I was actually kind of broke at the time. And I go in, and they're not expensive, a couple grand. And we go into the meditations, and I'm like, I don't normally meditate for any more than like 20 minutes.
right.
So I'm doing this with the rest of the group. There's 2,000 people in the room, and I'm seeing people screaming. Have you been to one before?
No, that's one of
Okay.
my, I would love to, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So people are screaming. They're having these Kundalini awakenings. I don't know what a Kundalini anything is at the time. I'm like, what is going on in here? And I'm not able to focus on myself, and which is
Right,
cool because you need to be able to do it in distraction, right? So I'm not able to focus on myself. And 3 days go by, and I'm finally starting to sink in. And on the fourth day, we start doing these walking meditations. And in the walking meditation, I had this really magical breakthrough where I'm walking down the beach, and they teach you how to like trance out and look at these dots. I saw dots. I don't know what it was.
okay,
And so I'm trancing out, and all of a sudden the dots get bigger, 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 bigger. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then it just like hits me in the face, and then I black out. And then something taps me on the head, and I thought something like hit me. And so I'm like wiping my head. And then all of a sudden I start crying. I hit the ground, my hands catch on fire, and my back starts to catch on fire. So I had this fractured vertebrae in my spine from triple jumping, because I used to just like, you just
right.
beat your legs up. And I used to walk with a limp and had all these issues. At the time, I had the thyroid problem. So, like 4 years before that, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease and had my thyroid completely radiated. So I don't have a thyroid. And at the thing, like I just my whole like body just like caught on fire, right? And I'm like, this is
When you say
bananas.
caught on fire, it just gets you're
Just
heated,
hot, just hot,
hot.
hot,
Okay,
right? Hot, tingly,
right.
and so I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I need to just like release. And I just started weeping a lot. And then I started forgiving my cousin. I forgave, my parents. I forgave myself. I forgave just everything. And I just had this, felt like this big weight was taken off my shoulders. And then I, look up, and I'm like, oh, wait, I can feel my hands. And then I start walking, and I'm walking, and I'm a little bit taller, right? And
Hmm.
I'm no longer walking with this limp anymore. And I'm like, this is nuts. And I could sit for hours on airplanes without, getting up and being like completely decrepit. And and that was like the first thing. And then inside of that actual retreat, the more crazy things that started to happen were, you start doing these other meditations, and I'm like, man, I really need to start, I wish I was working because I need to actually start making money. But I was changing the words from wish, is that, when I start
Yes.
working, I'm going to make more, I'm going to make this kind of money. I get a call from a client, and they're wiring me, hundreds of thousands of dollars into my bank account inside of
Wow.
this retreat, because it's at the end of the year, and they need to get money off the books. I'm like, this is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, well, this isn't me. I need to start donating it. So I start donating it. and then it comes back, and then I donate, it comes back, and I donate, it comes back. I'm like, this is crazy how this works. And I'm thinking I'm hacking the system, and I'm just learning how energy's supposed to move.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. There's a lot of people, and me and a buddy used to go to them over and over again because we're like, oh, we'll go make 100 grand and like sit in a retreat. And it would happen. Like we would sit in
Oh,
there and
funny.
make money, or just whatever, some stupid stuff would happen. And I recognize that it's not even that. Like it's not about hacking anything. It's about energy moves this way. But if you do it with a level of intention and integration and true intuition, and you honor the masculine and feminine of yourself and what's around you, and you do things for the benefit of the all, it'll happen exactly the way that you expect it to happen. But there's no expectation, just it will happen.
Right.
So
Oh, I
that's
love
what
that.
started to open up. And then in that same window of time after that deal, like I ran out of thyroid medication because it wasn't COVID. I couldn't get back to my endocrinologist. I was living in South Carolina at the time. Um, and I'm sitting here like I can't get any of this medication. And then all of a sudden, like I just didn't need it anymore. And I
Hmm.
go back like a year later and they're like, hey, your T3 in your body is the right amount, but your thyroid stimulating hormone is going bananas, which means you have no thyroid, but you're producing what your thyroid produces without.
Oh my God.
I'm like, all right.
Huh.
Yeah, 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 which is crazy. So, so that was, you see the miracles of that, and you think that it's Dr. Joe. And Dr. Joe is magical. And
Right.
he is a wide door builder that so many people can walk through. And
Right.
that's what I love about it. When you get stuck in the door, then what happens is everybody's congesting and nobody else can walk through it.
Right.
So it's us to get out of the way and us to go build other doors that people can walk through. And mine might be smaller, it might be bigger. I don't know. But it's just a matter of continuing to do the work from the inside instead of like looking at that as the thing and then becoming. There was a time when I actually got to meet him and we went to dinner together. And I'm like, I literally say, I want to serve you and work for you. How do I do this? How do I become the Black Dr. Joe?
Oh,
And
funny.
he's like, just stay close. And I'm like, all right. He's probably like, this guy's crazy. Um, but there was a novice state of self. And when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, that's not what it was. But I honored that. And then I grew past it or expanded from it.
Right.
Because that was a very effect driven thing, not a cause driven thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go through the, I want you to get into your, like, because you get into these laws and you explain the dimensions so differently and the bridges, and you get to the, like the 1 through 6.
Hmm.
Can we kind of get into some of your juicy stuff? Because
Yeah.
I feel like we're at a place now where people kind of understand like where you came, but you have so many amazing
Yeah.
ways of explaining these things, and I'm so fascinated, and I've learned so much from you in the last
Oh.
few, yeah, since I've set this in interview, or since I met you on Instagram. But can we can I like throw a few things out so you can kind
Yeah.
of explain? Because I feel like we're talking right now of, we're moving into 2024. This episode will be out in January. And people are like looking at our world going, I go down millions of rabbit holes and have interviewed so many people about that. But when you talk about the dimensions, I want you to explain 1 through 6 and how it's I am, and then once you get to 7, the we. I just, because that's the magic right there. Like
Hmm.
if people could get that, because it's so simple,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
It is. And it's based, so it's really cool. So it's this is there's not one thing that says this stuff, right? And so if I where
It's
I
you
got
created it.
yeah, it just kind of came in and I wrote this stuff down, and then I'm
Okay.
finding evidence of it in different areas. Like I found evidence of it in, there's this book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. There's another book called The Science of Being. There's another book called the it's going to come back to me in a minute. But there's tons of these books. Carl Jung has a book that talks about these numbers. There's a book called The Secrets of the Illuminati and they all have different fractions of these numbers and how these dimensions work, and they're not all the same thing. Another one called the Metunetter. And so I didn't read these before I knew this, which is
Hmm.
weird. But one day I just wrote out like this curve, and I have a video that I posted about it a long, long time ago. And I wrote out this curve, and I was like, well, if I start here and I go up and I go down, what does that mean? And what I ended up recognizing is that, that we have only 9 numbers, right? There's a
Right.
zero as well. So there's 10 numbers, but zero is really not a number because it has no quantity to it, but it births everything else into existence. So once the zero births the one, what is the one? The one is I am. Okay. And what's interesting about us as when we get into a bunch of I am statements and things along those lines, we're only I aming, but we're doing it from a space of being born into a space of separation. I can't recognize myself without a reflection.
Right.
So I can't recognize myself unless I ask the question of what I am. Otherwise, I'm just in this eternal abyss of singularity, which is where we want to be, but we want to get there or get there through experience. So to get there through experience, I have to then ask myself the question of who am I? I have to question everything about myself. So when you think about yourself going through life, you question everything about yourself because you are completely unsure. Even when a baby learns to walk, it's literally shaky. It's questioning its legs, is questioning the ground,
Right.
right? So that's all second dimension framework. So the first dimension is the stillness of just existing. Then you have to exist in the question of why am I existing? And when you question that existence is when all of the trauma of self, world, and infinity rip into existence because you're splitting the atom. Imagine
Right.
the atomic bomb. When you split it, what kind of disaster happens, right?
Right.
Then what happens is you have a thing called when do you do that? So if I split it and it's no time, well, I have to have time. So then you have this third dimension, which is time. And the cool thing about time is when you look at the actual number three, the elemental shape of the number three is a triangle. That is actually fire, right? Fire
Mm-hmm.
is spirit. So all spirit and everything comes into the space of time. I can't experience spirit without time. So then spirit starts to then interact with the fact that I've created this separatist of self, right?
Right.
So time is a gift of spirit, but I have to witness it over this extended infinity, eternal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I have to go and I have to have space to do this in. So the fourth dimension is space. Like, what does the space look like that I'm in? And space is the then recognition of can I take spirit and can I translate that spirit into space? And what am I going to get in space is gravity. Gravity is love, but it's also resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And what resists me, well, I have to create an adversary to resist me in order to then know that I'm loving myself. And so, what did God do? If you want to call it God or all or source, it had to create an adversary. It had to create something in the extension of polarity. And then we as human beings have to learn how to hold that polarity in the space of oneness. We have to be the threshold that holds it all together. So, we have to be the threshold between space and time.
Got it.
That makes sense? Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So,
Yes. I mean, yes, and I'm
yeah.
learning this again, but I've been listening to you explain it
Yeah.
because okay, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So then the threshold between space and time is Christ consciousness. Okay, Christ consciousness, they say, we don't have anything to measure this. Christ developed his consciousness between 30 and 33. Okay.
Right.
So it all dropped into him between 30 and 33. There's even more writings about this. Rudolf Steiner writes about it where he talks about Christ consciousness rolls itself onto the earth between the 25th and the 2nd of January. No wonder that Christ was born between the 25th, even though they say his real birthday was like March or something along those lines, right?
Right.
So that Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is born in that window of time. So we're actually coming up on this window now, or by the time this comes out, we came up on the window
Right.
where essentially Christ consciousness is dropping on the earth. And when we become conscious of it, then we move into the fifth dimension where we can actually receive the I am, the questioning of I am through time and spirit, through being able to overcome all of our obstacles in the spirit of time and space to then hold that and then take all the polarity and say, you know what, I'm going to live it all.
Right.
Right. That's when we start walking as fifth dimensional beings, but it's not our job to stay there because then we get lost in the clouds. And
Right.
then if I get lost in the clouds, I'm not serving anybody else. So it's our purpose in life to go back and help other individuals find that fifth dimension.
Right. But
And
see,
we all
that's the
rise.
part, like for me, the way you'd explain that, because people, can describe it like we're moving into the 5D,
Yeah.
but I understand. I mean, we are. I mean, people are that are understanding that thinking and mindset, but there's the way you say like we can't always be in that. We're coming back. We're using the bridges, right, to come back, and because we're a human, we are three-dimensional. So we're always being pulled back to bring others to the 5D.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean?
So yeah, we're here. Once we witness it and understand it, it's our responsibility because we created this entire world.
Right.
in order to help the world understand that it can become five dimensions, or it can
Right.
become a five-dimensional being. But we're not meant to be there. Every dimension is temporary,
Got
right?
it.
Even the wholeness once we get back to, but in that temporary dimension that we're in, we can create permanence because it's only now. So
Right.
the time mind fuck is what I call it.
Me too.
is, is is that there's a constant thing that we are looking at from like, oh, it takes this and that, and I want to live in this forever,
Right.
right? It's not forever. Forever is now. And once I actually choose now, and then I can also say, you know what? I need to split myself. And this is this bilocating thing that they talk about. I need to split myself. I need to go back to the third dimension and do the work with people that are suffering. You
Hmm.
know, if somebody's suffering and I'm sitting in a 5D space, and this is what I feel like a lot of gurus teach is like, hey, you just need to separate yourself from that and become, blissful and stay over there. And
Hmm.
that's to me okay in one regard, but on the other regard, what are you doing to serve another?
Right.
So I need to go back and like jump in the
Right.
shit sometimes, and I
Right.
need to be in the pain. And what I recognize that even in the story of Christ, and do I think that he's the only way to heaven? Or no? Like, I mean, there's the infinite ways
Right.
to heaven, which is all within self, and that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But the thing that Christ did when Christ chose to get on a cross with all the infinite power and wisdom is to get back into the suffering, to feel all the pain, to
Hmm.
endure that pain, and then say, you know what, I'm going to take that in, and then I'm going to actually translate that from my awareness to self. So did Christ die for our sins? Sure. But it was the sins of itself. Are
Right.
we willing to die for our own sins?
Right.
And that's the thing that what Christ consciousness teaches us, that we forget. We think it's somebody else's thing. And all it was is that it was just an example of what we need to do for ourselves. That when we are in the 5D, can I go back and get in the shit again?
Right.
And that's okay, right? And once you do that and you can do it with fluency, you're now holding you're holding the threshold of time and space into love. And now all that happens is that love just starts to pour in over and over again.
And I, in my life now, I'm 10 years older than you. And, I think, and I have children, 15 and 17, but, for knowing what I know, and I've done you know, my personal development, my spiritual, pretty much my whole life. And I get to this place now that, gosh, I get the 5D. I get that. But I think when you talk about purpose,
Hmm.
there's a purpose for me that I need to go back and I need to bring up. I have this you talk about divine purpose and grounded purpose,
Purpose. Hmm.
and I understand. And that's a cool way too to explain it to people. It's like our divine purpose is just love, right? That's everybody's. Is love, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
I'm pulled to, like you say, like some people are just, living in the 5D, and I love that feeling. I'm calm and I know it's all love, and I'm vibrating at the highest I can possibly vibrate. And, it's like, I'm in the present moment. I know that's all
Yep.
that we have. But then it's like, oh, I have a purpose. Like I need to get back there and pull these people and be that vibration for them, and, be the example, right? Like
Yes.
I teach a teenage class, and I see the teenagers, and I'm around them a lot because of my girls, but, and I just see this, like they're at this vibration, and but society and social media, and we're kind of where we're living and what they've been living in the last few years, has pulled them down. But
Hmm.
as soon as I get them to see their light and their vibration, it's like the
Yeah.
fastest train to
Yeah.
the ninth dimension.
Slingshot. Yeah. It's a
It is a
slingshot.
slingshot, and
Hmm.
you do talk about slingshot. So continue. Anyway, I just wanted to give you my.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. No, I mean, and that's exactly what it is. It's us being the vessel, and we are integrated vessels in order to execute the will of the all and source, to be able to pull that light back in and then do it with rhythm all the time.
Yes, rhythm.
Yeah, yeah. And once we
My
create that
gosh.
rhythm, it's just flow. Like, you just do it, and then you're not thinking about it. You're just part of it. Like, our cells are vibrating at a very specific frequency. They're not trying to remember, I need to do the skin thing today.
Right.
I need to do the tooth thing today. I need to do the eye thing today. I need the blood thing today. No, they're just doing it. It's their rhythm. It's their purpose. They are integrated in it. And that's what it does. What is our purpose? And why do we choose on a daily basis to not live in our purpose? And when we choose the opposite of it, then we're not, what I call it is we're not accepting what our will is. We're not accepting the will of our full potential. And once we accept it, we make a choice. And then that's when the actual love starts to flow in.
Right. And when you explain how to find your purpose, is you write down the 5 things you love and the 5 things you fear.
Yeah, yeah. And I ended up creating this whole like AI purpose generator statement where you can go like on, I'll send you the site. But you go on the site and then you get into it and you write down the 5 things you love, the 5 things you fear, you put what you like to do in life. And if you could do something and never have to and get, paid infinitely for it, and it would just be your thing, what would it be? Like, what are your talents? And then it writes it down and it creates a little statement for you. And
Huh.
is it your purpose? No, but it's a purpose statement that'll allow you to find your purpose.
Huh.
So it starts to kind of pull that awareness together. So at least you see the bounds of your polarity. Because like if you see what you love and what you fear, it's the bounds, it's your container.
Right.
If I say, okay, this is what I'm good at, then that's the thing that sits in the middle. And if I
Right.
said, well, I do this for a living, well, how can I translate what I do for a living into what I'm really good at? And then hold that in a container of love or fear. So when I show up on a daily basis, at least I'm doing something that's closer to my purpose than anything else.
Right. Oh, I love that. Just because I learned that from you the last few days, I was thinking, okay, my purpose, like without doing that. But I love being a mom. I love teaching teenagers. I love seeing the light in people shine when they get that that's all they are is light. I
Mhm.
have this, it's such a passion of mine, Sean.
Yes.
And it's like everything I do now in my life is all from there. It's like I do this because I love it so much.
Hmm.
I love being a mom. I can't wait to be in their presence and do something, and it's just such a way of like when people understand that that's how life is supposed to be,
Yep. That's
right?
it.
Like living in that high vibration all the time, living high.
Mhm.
I live high without taking any drugs.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I love that. And you even being able to, like what you say, like what I love, like I love being a mom, I love helping people find their potential. I love looking at it in those lanes and, even showing up the way that you do, it allows you to say, okay, you always see the potential in people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know that, like the most, the- if I look at a soul that I can influence the most that's in my life, it's your child,
Right.
right? They are an empty vessel. And what's beautiful is when you start to see them reflecting your wholeness, not because you're doing it from a space of control, but you're doing it from a space of abundance,
Right.
things really start to change. And that's honestly my in the journey of being a dad right now is a challenge. Because
Right. I was
my
going to ask you that because
yeah,
he's 15.
yeah,
How do you parent? Like, what is your, like, if I was going to say, in a
style.
few words style, what's your parenting? What's your intention? Because I always say, like, I'm so intentional when I've parented, and he was little when you were in jail
Hmm.
or in prison.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my parenting style, it was, hey, I want you to be like me, go to the same school, like I went to this really cool private school and whatnot, be a hard worker and do all the stuff. It's just not his thing. Anytime I force him to that, it's like two rams butting heads. So now it's look, he doesn't live with me all the time. He lives, in Dallas with his mom. But what I recognize with him is that I just need to give him as much fertile ground so he can explore and find himself. And sometimes that feels like the opposite of parenting
Hmm.
because I'm like, stop doing this. My only real intention that I have for him is just to be motivated. Find your motivation. Seek that out. Whether that's you're motivated to read a book, whether that's motivated to play video games, just find a motivation and make sure that that motivation benefits more than yourself.
Hmm.
And find enough fertile ground to do it. Trip on your face, do what it is. I don't have any expectations around him for grades, but just if you have an agreement to go to school,
Right.
right? Um, I'm not going to agree that you're going to be great in math. You might not be great in math, and that's okay. I mean, the whole school system is the school system, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm not gonna poo poo on it. It's great for some people, not great for others. Everybody has their own learning style. So I'm all about him finding his container and then building it so he can become the full fledged. His name's Cade that he is. Um, so yeah, that's my parenting style.
um, can we talk about, because you talk about the hermetic
Hmm.
laws of the universe?
Yep.
That's something that you've really delved into. Are we okay? Can we go a few more minutes?
Yeah, please. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to push you because I know
No,
you're,
you're good.
um, because I love that too. And you explain it so in a way that you're just such a good teacher.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're good. Really, you just make it like I get it. I've really opened my eyes to these seven. Like go ahead,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seven hermetic.
Yeah.
And where did you find that? You just in your books, reading,
S-
put it together one day, like channeled
so
it.
where did it come from? I first bumped into it. I kept getting, how do I even start with this? It's a great question. It kind of came in one day where I was like, oh, my mind, and I can think of thing, and I'm starting to see it come up. And there's this, I kept getting, people as above, so below. And I'm like, what is the hermetic principle people are talking about? It's like, well, that's a hermetic principle. And so I was getting clues and I'm picking up on things. And then one day I just type in as above, so below, hermetic principles. And then this whole book, The Kabbalah, came out, or
Mm,
that came out, was there. And so I went down the rabbit hole of the Hermetica and the Kabbalah and read through that. Hardest read, and then
mm.
Emerald tablets. So like I
Oh,
read those
right.
three.
Hmm.
And those were not fun to read because it's like in a whole other like English that doesn't land. But so I had to read it like 4 or 5 times to get to it. So the first time I read it, I threw it to the side because I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And I read it again and I'm like, okay, there's something here. And then I kept reading it. So I read it, I think a full 5 times and then started to write down where it made sense for me and where it didn't. And then I sought out more information outside of that. So, within the Hermetic laws, yeah, I mean, when I try to find my way around them or like there's another law, there's just a law that's a derivative of that law.
Right.
And so if we can walk by those 7 laws of the universe, then in essence, we can kind of do anything because you
Hmm.
understand how the code was written. And that's like that seventh dimension that I also talk about is the 7 laws are the seventh dimension because it's basically taking that and moving yourself from the I am state to the we are state because then you understand why everything's created. So me doing the internal work of like the first law, I just call it like thoughts become things. It says, everything is, mental in the mind of the all, or they say it in a way that is very
Right.
challenging to understand, but it's just your thoughts become things, right? Everything is mental, everything is in the mind. But the thing is that it's not just the mind because we tricked ourselves into thinking it. It's actually creating a pure thought. So can I actually feel my thoughts? So if I can feel my thoughts, then that is where my mind goes, and at which point I'm now in full resonance of this energy center of my body. Then what I also done, I've mapped the actual laws to each individual chakra too, because if you understand where those laws sit in the chakras of the body, then you can understand how to like feel something. You're like, oh, okay, this is law number 4. I'm actually, in some karmic thing right now. I need to start figuring out what that means and move to the seat of cause. Second law, everything, correspondence, law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. So if you understand that everything has kind of like the same structure to it. If I understand cellular structure at the smallest space, I can also understand universal structure.
Hmm.
So then I can look at one thing and know that this means that. This is where psychic ability comes from. Then I go into, okay, well, everything has vibration. Well, of course, so it's all connected. If it all has vibration, it's energy. Even the air has vibration. So I'm connected to everybody. So you and I are connected, even though
Right.
we're talking through a screen. Okay. And we're connected not only in this time, we're connected interdimensionally. And so we're just existing. And then once you know that, you just start pouring in information. And that's like this triangle thing. It's
Right.
Illuminati stuff, but um, it's this triangle thing because that's the spark and the flame of existence. That's where Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's where all of this, like this 3 number comes from. And then you get into, well, after that, everything has a rhythm. So once you understand rhythm, pendulum swings to the left, swings to the right. How do I actually play with that? Where do I live between those actual aspects? And that's time. That's how you play with time. And you could see an upswing and a downswing to it. And I used to see like the upswings and downswings in my day. I can do at 10:30 every day. This is going to happen at 10:30 every day. This is going to happen. It happened like clockwork. Now, did I
Hmm.
observe it into existence or did it happen? I don't know. But then I stopped it happening because I didn't want it to happen anymore.
Oh.
So it
So
was,
you say that again. So at 10:30, you knew that was coming. Like because
yeah,
you were
I could
you
feel it downswing every day at 10:30.
okay.
Okay. And then I'm like, I don't like this anymore because I'm not going to be a victim to this thing called time. So then I started to shift that energy to where
Mm,
this is that 5D work, to where you're no longer saying I'm going to be, because the space that I was in was becoming this time bound thing that I had created a mental feeling
mm-hmm.
construct off of, that was creating a reality.
Right.
It's kind of like looking at it backward.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started to actually be fully in my heart and then see it all as love, I'm like, well, I can create something different. And then what happened is everything shifted and that started to actually not be what it was anymore.
Hmm. I love
Right.
that. Yes.
And then you go into
Powerful.
sixth dimension, which is just God's plan, your plan for yourself, your higher self that came in. But then that's the actual law number six. So like you got four, you have five, five is polarity, everything has the second extension of it. You go into six, six is karma, right? And so there's this whole like karmic thing that happens where it's most people look at the effects of their life, not the cause. But if I always move into the seat of cause and I set myself in the middle of it, then I'm always creating the effect. I'm no longer being pulled by the effect. And
Right.
that starts to shift the dynamic. And then the law number seven, which seven is also gender and generation, is the combination of masculine and feminine that all starts to pull together into a space of we. So the only way I get another human body outside of myself is when I come together with masculine and feminine. The
Right.
only way that I move from I to we to an extension of myself is through another person. So the number seven is very much so about the aspect of generation, of me being able to actually generate life, of me being able to live outside of this self container. So I can do the work of through six, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once I get outside of the six, I get into the seven, and that's the seventh hermetic law. And then there's eight and nine, which go into this different perspective of like the way we see all of it as one, and then unifying back into singularity. But that's a whole other episode.
Is it ever?
Yeah.
When you talk about feminine and masculine, and you did a one of the videos on, how men have taken away the feminine aspect of women and kind of goes back to Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that? Can you
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
elaborate
yeah,
on?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, it wasn't necessarily Adam at all, and it wasn't necessarily Eve, but it was the what we've done over the last, what I call the last even 2,000 years, if not further and beyond, is we have created a very systemized structure of what a man is, and
Mm-hmm.
we've created a very systematic structure of what feminine is. Feminine, you guys are vessels, right? You are here to receive. There's a reason you have a certain anatomy. There's a reason you do a very specific thing. And there's a reason that you actually channel intuition better than any possible man could on earth, right? Just naturally. Now, could we get into it? Yeah. Could I embrace my feminine and really start to actually start pulling in information differently? Sure. Could I, receive, sexual intercourse differently? Sure. I could do all of those things, right? And what's interesting about that is that that is now a full embodiment of self, to be able to then, what I call is like the Merkaba, like I've got this tattoo here, but the Merkaba, where those two energies start to come together and create this, the vessel combined with the actual integration, the grounding elements and the actual divine elements of being able to pour in like full source into a container. And then that starts to create this chariot of light. Within the story of Adam and Eve, what Adam and Eve was just in my opinion, which is just a half truth, is that it was God itself, or all itself, creating the experience of humanity on earth, and then saying, okay, I'm going to give you all this free will choice, and you're going to choose a path of how much we're going to structure that into a programmatic system. And then all we did is we said, okay, I'm now going to choose fear. The snake or the Satan, whatever you want to call it, that was there, wasn't like, hey, go do the bad thing. It was just, do
Right.
you want to have your mind open or not? And in having our mind open or not, to be able to choose to be our own God, which is all that we asked to do at that time, then what happened is we split ourselves into two beings. And then in those beings, the only way we get back into unity of God, to where we still make a free will choice, but we make
Mm-hmm.
a choice that is tied to our sixth dimensional self, or to our full consciousness of creation. And God's plan rolls into us because we're now combined in masculine and feminine together. And then at which point the entire plan of God rolls into the architecture of our physical body.
Got it.
And that's where we lost it in Adam and Eve, because it's like it's split, and then it's like, okay, we're going
Right.
to do our own thing. And
Right.
that wasn't what it was intended to do when we opened our mind.
Got it. Got it. Got
Yeah,
it.
I know
I,
it's so much
oh
in there.
my gosh, is it ever? what, when there was something about, you're talking about we're moving into the age of Aquarius and it's moving into the more feminine, where this world, the planet is
Hmm.
moving to more feminine.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you see the earth in 10 years?
I mean, so there's do you study the Kabbalah or the Tree of Life or any of that, and the
No.
Malchut and whatnot? Okay, so there's inside of that Tree of Life at the bottom is a thing called Malchut, and it's actually the full vessel of light that's the feminine energy that was created from the entity. And it says that in the 5 stages of the Kabbalah, we are actually in that stage right now. We just entered into it, which is also correspondent with the age of Aquarius of what that looks like. So you see different evidence of this in many different versions of like ancient texts and religious scriptures and whatnot. So we're at that point. And what's even more interesting is successful movies always have a really strong divine feminine character now. When you
Mm.
try to do like Black Adam with The Rock and whatnot in this age, it doesn't work. Like that movie
Hmm.
kind of flopped, right?
Right.
I'm really interested to see what Aquaman does.
Yeah, you're right.
Because, I'd rather go see Willy Wonka because even Wonka like is holding this kind of like, feminine
More
energy of,
feminine.
yeah.
Huh.
That was my choice over because the Aquaman of that, I'm like, I'm gonna go see this.
Oh, okay.
And as tattooed and whatever that I am, that was my thing. So it's where I see us in 10 years is that we are going to have a different, we'll have more feminine leadership. We'll be honoring that intuition as a vessel or a container. We will be integrating, there'll be really strong masculine integrators that have shown how we do this over time. But in order for us to continue to tap into abundance, we are going to have to honor that feminine energy. Doesn't mean whether it's homo, heterosexual, it doesn't matter like how you come together. It could be, you know, it doesn't have, it's not a sexual thing. It's just,
Right.
am I going to honor like my mother? Am I going to honor my sister? Am I going to honor my female friend? Am I going to listen to that? And because every one of the feminine vessels out there are going to be natural channels that are going to be snapped into this different level of resonance. The masculine will be able to channel through, but we are going to be here to do the work, to facilitate the work, to actually put it from an architectural aspect into life. And that's going to change the way that we execute,
Hmm.
what I sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Where are you going? Like, let's end it and where everyone can find you, but where are you going to be in, like, what are you looking to do? I
Oh,
mean, it's just, I feel like you're just at the beginning.
I'm just at the beginning, but I think it's always the beginning.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
I mean, I would just say I'm just going to keep doing this. I mean, I don't. My thing is just to be in love. To me, love is a unifying energy that is seen in reverence to pull polarity and duality together for the benefit of the all. And whatever that work means, I'm just going to keep doing that. I don't have any specific, I have an intention of continuing to just put that information out there into the world. I don't have any expectation around it.
Right.
And I'm going to form an agreement with myself. And that agreement is going to be that, look, I'm going to do as much as I can on social that'll be accepted. I'm going to help individuals get this message as fast as they possibly can. Um, I'm going to be, a great, husband and father. I'm going to be a great friend to my friends, and just keep showing up in love and showing people the doors to themselves. Because it's
Mhm.
not the minute I become a guru to anybody is the minute I'm going to get out of the way.
Right.
Because it's not about that.
Right. I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
Sean, it's been so fun. Thank you for being here and taking your time out of your day.
Yeah.
Oh, I've
Yeah.
just really enjoyed being with you the last few days. You've been with me.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it.
And we can find you. Instagram would probably be the best, right?
Yeah, Instagram's good. The Abundance 10,000. I have a website called scienceofabundance.ai, so you can go play around with that. There's some cool stuff on it. Um, Podcast, it's called Daily Alchemy with Sean Clayton, even though I don't do it daily anymore because they're getting to like 30 minutes each. So I was like, this is heavy channeling every day. I was getting exhausted. But but next to that, that's it. Yeah. And book coming out in the next year.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, doing that whole vibe. I'm just gonna keep going.
Good. I love it.
All right.
Well, thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
No,
So
thank
nice to
you.
meet you.
A lot of love. I appreciate it. Thank you as well.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.